Welcome to Faith Talks Wood Podcast. I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
We're a podcast about faith, woodworking, and, well, all kinds of stuff. And you're going to hear a lot of that today on the episode. But so, Tom, a couple episodes ago, I talked about we were going to get like 13 inches of snow, right? And so we ended up getting, 9 or 10 inches here. And so I ended up working from home that next day. And so it stuck around for a bit, but Christmas Day was 60 degrees. And so we lost it all. I mean, we didn't have any snow for Christmas, but I did get to do something I haven't done yet, is that I took my tractor and I plowed with it. And so I just used the front bucket. I don't have a back blade yet. And so I just use the front bucket, and I've got a paved driveway. So I just touch the bucket down to where it touches, and then just, pushing it along. And I had so much fun out there just pushing snow around, man. It's like a kid in a candy store. And yeah, that was fun. And the one thing though, because it was so warm, is that I made ruts all in the yard getting the tractor back from the barn to the front. It's just like everything's mud around here and just nasty. And yeah, so we have no snow now. It's been warm, actually. I think we're supposed to get snow. We're recording today's Friday, Sunday, and Monday. We're supposed to have some snow. I don't know how much, but from what I'm seeing in the Farmer's Almanac and stuff, January is going to be pretty rough for us. So we're supposed to get pretty heavy snow in January and February. So it's going to be fun.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't want to make you jealous, because that would not be the right thing to do. But we woke up Christmas Eve morning with about, it wasn't a lot, about, I guess, between 3 and 6 inches, something like that, of snow.
Yeah.
And, but it stayed cold enough. Now, most of it melted, like up on the mountains. We have a thing called the Brook Cliffs that go kind of along our property. And so most of it melted on ours, but there was still a layer of white left when we woke up on Christmas. So, I've been living here 2 years now, and I'm 53 years old. Before we moved here, I had never had a white Christmas, never, my entire life. And so now we've had 2 of them. So it's pretty cool. And then me and my daughter, now up on the mesa, they got like 13 inches the other day, and me and my daughter went snowboarding and just had the time of our life. God, it was just fun. I just can't tell you how much I love going up and just hanging out with my daughter on the mountain. Like, it's just, when my daughter was younger, we got to do that type of stuff all the time. But now that she's older and in college, like right now, she's out for the holidays. And so we've got to do so much stuff together, and it's just absolute blast. But yeah, I'm hoping we get some more. I'm hoping, my wife reads the Farmer's Almanac almost every day, and it is amazing how accurate that thing is. It really is. So if it says you're going to get a lot of snow, like, the only thing I believe more than the Farmer's Almanac is the Bible. But I would say that is the second most accurate book.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's all on patterns and, kind of weather patterns and stuff like that. I don't know exactly how it works, but I do know that something about, is it a El Nino? No. Yeah. Something about we're going to have the late part of the winter is going to be rough. And so, yeah, kind of looking forward to it in a sense, just because, we're back from Tennessee now and we want to see some snow. And I want to, I really want my property to freeze so that it's not a muddy mess everywhere. But something you'll find kind of funny. Do you hunt? Have you ever hunted or?
So my dad tried to take me and teach me when I was young. And when I was young, I was the most hyper kid on the planet, and I couldn't be quiet. And so finally he quit taking me because I couldn't shut my mouth, because I'd be sitting in the stand and be like, "Daddy, look at that. Daddy, look at that. Oh, did you hear that?" And I'd be like, "Shh." But so no, I'm not. But ironically, I have this fascination with archery. And so I have a bow, And and so we early on, our first guest was, our pastor at my church that has been teaching me how to
Will
fly
Britt.
fish. And Will, like, he hunts everything, fishes everything, like you name it. Like, he's just an avid. And so he says he's going to take me and teach me. So my goal is to go next hunting season and go bow hunting. So and I'm going to tell you what, the best meat I have ever eaten is elk. And
Interesting.
dude, it is so good. I just cannot tell you. Now, I love venison. I love deer meat. But man, I'm going to get me an elk. I'm learning. But the downside out here in Colorado versus back in North Carolina, and back in North Carolina, if you wanted to hunt, you paid for your hunting license and you went hunting. You killed whatever you want. Here, you have to draw a tag. And
same here in Pennsylvania.
And you pay, and it's like, my goodness. So that the downside is like you pay for that tag, and you may or may not get drawn for a tag. So just because you want to go hunting doesn't mean you're going to get to. And then if you draw the tag, pay for it. If you don't see one, you lost your money. But
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. So I didn't grow up hunting. We lived in the city, didn't really hunt or anything like that. A guy I work with is big into hunting, and then everybody at church, we go to a small country church in a small country town. Everybody's hunting. And so had a buddy from church hunt our property this rifle season, and everybody's like, Will, we gotta get you hunting. And I have nothing against it. I just never did. But I did on Black Friday buy a trail cam because I'm like, I want to see what's out there. And so I put this trail cam. We have an apple orchard out back. So I put on one of the apple trees. Now all the apples have gone now, but so I put this trail cam on this one apple tree, and I faced it kind of towards where I've seen with the flashlight. And it's a couple hundred yards, past the house, but like where deer have been. And I had 700 pictures of the grass swaying and the sun going beneath the trees, and like one or two pictures of deer. I was like, this is dumb. And so I ended up moving it into the woods. But yeah, anyways, hunting, I've got a few buddies that are bound and determined to get me hunting next year. So, and in Pennsylvania, you have to take a hunter safety course, which I've never done. And so I've got to, schedule that and do the hunter safety course and all this stuff. And so, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. Huge around here in Pennsylvania. Some of the biggest deer in the country are here. So, and they're everywhere. They're a nuisance. Speaking of nuisance, you have the Bible breakdown, and you've got a really awesome story to talk about from the Bible. So I'll let you take it away from here.
All right. So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to read from the NIT today, and we're going to dive into Joshua chapter 7 and read verses 1 through 12. And there's a lot to break down in this. I'm going to read it first, and then we'll kind of break it down. So, but Israel violated the instructions about the things set apart for the Lord. And I'm going to stop right there to explain how we got to this point. Okay, so if you were to go back into chapter 6, Israel's going in to take over Jericho, and the Lord had given them instructions that as they take over the city, that all of the gold, bronze, and iron are sacred to the Lord and must be brought into the church, basically into the church, into the treasury of the Lord, it's reserved for God. But we're going to find out what happens. So he gave those instructions, and that's what leads up to this chapter 7. So here in chapter 7, we just read, but Israel violated the instructions about the things set apart for the Lord. A man named Achan had stolen some of these dedicated things, so the Lord was very angry with the Israelites. Achan was the son of Carmi, a descendant of Zimri, son of Zerah, and the tribe of Judah. Joshua sent some of his men from Jericho to spy out the town of Ai, east of Bethel, near Beth Haven. When they returned, they told Joshua, "There's no need for all of us to go up there. It won't take more than 2,000 or 3,000 men to attack Ai. Since there are a few of them, don't make all of our people struggle to go up there." So approximately 3,000 warriors were sent, but they were soundly defeated. The men of Ai chased the Israelites from the town gate as far as the quarries, and they killed about 36 who were retreating down the slope. The Israelites were paralyzed with fear as this turn of events, and their courage melted away. Joshua and the elders of Israel tore their clothing in dismay, threw dust on their heads, and bowed face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord until evening. Then Joshua cried out, "O sovereign Lord, why did you bring us across the Jordan River if you're going to let the Amorites kill us? If only we had been content to stay on the other side. Lord, what can I say now that Israel has fled from its enemies? For when the Canaanites and all the other people living in the land hear about it, they will surround us and wipe our name off the face of the earth. And then what will happen to the honor of your great name?" But the Lord said to Joshua, "Get up. Why are you lying on your face like this? Israel has sinned and broken my covenant. They have stolen some of the things that I commanded must be set apart for me. And they have not only stolen them, but they have lied about it and have hidden the things among their own belongings. That is why the Israelites are running from their enemies in defeat." So this passage here, as you listen to it and you read it, we go back in chapter 6, God had told them to set aside the gold, the bronze, and iron, and all that for him. And then those few people stole what God has said, "set apart for me." And you hear Joshua there where he goes and cries to the Lord. He's like, "Man, God, you told us you were giving us this land, that we're going to come in here and we're going to take it, and now this has happened." So obviously Joshua and the other leaders didn't know that those guys had taken what wasn't theirs. And so then those 36 people died as a consequence, and the reason being because the Lord did not go into battle with them. And so there's several points to learn from this. First of all, God tells us set the first. So Jericho was the first city. They were taking the treasury from that was to be set apart for God. Same thing as the tithe in our income. The first fruits are set apart for God. Well, if we were to jump on over into chapter 8 and some of the other chapters, as they repented and they went and took those cities, God told them to keep all the treasury. So the first city, God said, "It's for me." Then after that, he's given it all to them. But those couple guys had to go and do it their way and steal what was supposed to be set apart for God. Now, here's the thing that is tough about being a Christian. So often in our lives, we see people, and I'm going to give a few examples. My cousin, Donna, one of the most beautiful, sweet souls that have ever walked the face of the earth, loved God. A drunk driver coming home from the bar hit her, and she died. My wife's sister, a few years ago, got ran off the road by somebody. And I'm talking, she not only went to church every day, told everybody about Jesus, picked up kids that didn't have a way to get to church, took them to church. I mean, like, she lived the life that I want to live. Like, she was passionate and lived out her faith, rolled her Jeep and died. How many people have you known in your life that got cancer because of a company polluting the water? Or I could go on and on and on about the things where we don't do anything wrong or our loved ones don't do anything wrong, but they pay the consequences of someone else's actions. So we live in a fallen world. And here in this chapter of Joshua, these guys did the wrong thing, and the rest of the tribe paid the price. 36 people paid the price of losing their life, but they lost that battle there because of the actions of a few people. But did that make Joshua and them lose their faith? It did not. They still went to the Lord, worshiped him, pleaded with him. And it's the same with us. There are things that happen in our lives. And sometimes it's losing a loved one to a car accident or a disease or something that we just don't understand. And we think to ourselves, why doesn't God just reach his hand down and stop that car from hitting my cousin or hitting my wife's sister? But we don't understand the whole plan. And but the sad thing is that people in this world can do bad things and good people can take the consequences of it. But as Christians, we cannot let that waver our faith. It does not change the fact that God is good and God is good all the time and all good things come to God, that he loves us, that he sent his only son to die for us because he loved us so much and wanted us to be with us. And so when I was reading this week, I was just like, wow, man, that's a powerful passage to think about how these men paid the price because of a few people's actions. But we encounter those situations in our lives, and but we have to remember that the good things come from God. And just because something bad happens because of what somebody else has done, we can't let it waver our faith. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, that's so good. One of the dichotomies, one of the biggest struggles as a Christian within the faith is, why does a good God allow bad things to happen? Or why does God allow evil to happen? Right. And you have a lot of people, atheists, and those who will argue that, and that'll be their point. Like, you say there's a God, but there's all this hurt in the world, and there's cancer, and there's killings, and there's all this stuff. And it's one of the hardest things to answer to somebody. But one of the things over the years that I've realized is that, one, I'm not God and I can't answer for him. And I don't know, like you said, I don't know the plans that he has. And I don't know that the circumstances and situations that we go through aren't something that can be used by God, because God can use everything, right? And when we are in his word and when we are keeping his word in our heart and praying to him, man, it's not about, we so often think like, why does he allow bad things to happen? But it's more about, how do you react to it? Right? Because that's the whole thing. As a Christian, we have the resource of the Bible and his word, and we have access to him, and we have access to his Holy Spirit. And there are times in our lives where things happen and we do not know why they happen. We don't have answers for them. We lose loved ones, so many different things in that sort. But what we can't do is we can't get focused on that, because what I've learned in life is sometimes you have to go through tragedy to see God's majesty, right? It's in the lowest moments sometimes where we see the glory of God the most, because we are emptied of ourselves, anything that is a distraction from him. And we come to a point where we recognize that, oh my God, you are so much bigger than me, right? You are so much greater than this situation. And yeah, we need to, that saying that was big back 10 years ago, let go and let God, right? Sometimes we have to. And And it's really unfortunate that the situations of one person can affect somebody else. And, when the drunk driver, uh, runs off the road and does with something like that, one of the things that I try to put myself in perspective of, and of course, I haven't had it happen to me per se, um, but I did lose my uncle to a car accident, and a good friend of mine when I was in high school. Is you don't know what's going on with somebody. And so, like, the drunk driver, what is going on in their life that they bring themselves to a point where inebriation is what calms them, because it's temporary, right? Everything that we try to do in this world is temporal, but God is eternal. And so I try to put myself in those shoes and just think, like, man, what's going on? It's like the waitress, right? She had a bad day. She's been, mouthy with you or not, giving you the best service. Well, you don't know. Maybe her kid's sick and she's got to pay for a babysitter so she could be at work when she'd rather be home or maybe her, parent just died or something. You never know what's going on in somebody's life. And so, we need to take that into consideration. Um, and you took this a whole different route than I thought you were going to take it. when you sent me this, actually, I've been studying a little bit Joshua 7 and 6 and kind of going over it and reading some commentary and stuff. And that's not the way my mind went, because my mind, went a different way. But man, you're so right. Like, we don't realize how even what we do can be a consequence to others, right? Even as Christians, right? We tend to over or don't think into what's happening, and we do something or say something or whatever, and you don't know how that's going to affect somebody. But one of the things I love about Joshua 7 and what's happening here and in 6, it's an interesting story because you have it's strange. Think about these God's like march around the city, and then on the seventh day, blow the horns, and wall's going to fall down. And so they did this, and they're on a high, right? So they come to this town of Ai, and the spies go in, and they're like, this is a small little town. We got this. So as I was reading commentary, one guy said, you could take this as either they had confidence in God, or the more likely case is they had confidence in themselves and they were arrogant, and so they thought, we can take them. And what's funny is they lost 36 people. Was it 36-26? Well, that's 36 more than they lost before, right? Nobody died when they went into Jericho, and so they're like, oh, we're not infallible, right? And so, they retreat. But it reminds me of in high school, I played volleyball. So in Pennsylvania, men's volleyball, where I'm at in District 10 volleyball, is very competitive. You see high school from my district go to states yearly. There's several high schools in District 10. It's very competitive. And so when I was a senior in high school, we went undefeated all the way to the state championship. We were a dominant team. People, when they saw the Meadville Bulldogs coming in, they got scared, because we had one guy that was 6'6", and we had just a lot of talent, man, and we were really good, and we knew we were good. And so we come in to the state championship to play a team that we had crushed back earlier in the season. And so we came in with this head thinking, we're going to rock these guys. We already did it once. We're going to do it again. Well, we forgot this little thing called revenge, and they were out for blood, and we lost the states. We came second in state because we went in with this head that we were going to take it all, and we didn't, because, we were arrogant, and we were blinded by that. And so I see that in this, right? They're going in there and they're thinking, yeah, we're just gonna take this. And here God is saying, hey, I told you guys, and you didn't listen. And now here you go, And so, but back to your point, it stinks, especially in the professional world. And this, you've owned businesses, you've managed people, you run, when you have somebody that does something wrong and it comes to you, right? And you've got to fix a problem because somebody else messed up. And that actually happened to me today. Now I can't say it wasn't really a mess up, but I spent all afternoon fixing an issue that was broke yesterday, and that guy was off today. So I had to clean up the mess. And I don't mind it. Like, my personality is, I'm not like that. But at some point, after being on the phone for 3 hours with support, you start to question like all kinds of stuff, right? But as Christians, we really need to step back, look in the Word, and recognize when God is working.
Yep. And the whole thing is, like, the difference between Jericho and I is, with Jericho, God was with them. They had God's favor. They had God's blessing. Then those few guys had to go and screw it all up. And so when they went to Ai, they did not have God's favor and blessing. And so if we want, ironically, we have a question today from a listener sent in. So I think this is a perfect time for you to read that question, because it really kind of ties into this story. So why don't you go ahead and share that question with us, Will?
Before I do that, I just want to say thank you to all the listeners. And if you want to support the podcast, a couple ways you could do it: patreon.com/Faith Talks Wood. The other way is by just giving us a 5-star review on Apple. It goes a long way. And obviously praying for us. Tom and I love this podcast, and we want to stay in his will as we continue the podcast. And what you'll hear here in a little while is we're going to talk about what we feel God's going to do with the podcast and where we think it's going in 2024. And it's going to be pretty exciting. But thank you for all you who listen. And if you want to support the podcast, there are several ways you can do so. And all of those are in the description as well. So, all right. So we got a message on our Instagram from Lindsay. And Lindsay says, "Hi, I have a question for you guys. I recently, within the last year, started a woodworking business, and I'm committed to seeking the Lord and being obedient to what he leads me to do in this business. I've not set up a way for people to buy or order things yet, but it is coming in the near future. And so far, it's just been word of mouth and commission projects. My main question is, how do you figure your tithe? I have a full-time job, and woodworking is a side gig. I tithe on my regular job income and view the side business as almost a separate entity. I would like to tithe from the business as well, but is it after material cost and general shop overhead? Thanks for the advice." Tom, I'm going to let you start this one off and give your thoughts on the tithe aspect. And I'm excited to answer this one.
Okay, so with the business, there are multiple types of businesses, and I've had several over my career, and so you might be a sole proprietorship, and so since you're just starting out, I'm going to take a guess that that's probably what you are. That's what most of us kind of start out as. And when I say a sole proprietorship, means you're an individual, you have no employees. Everything that the business loses is your problem. Everything that business gains is also your reward. Whereas you could be a sole proprietorship and still be an LLC. So LLC it's a type of corporation for protection, really. But then you get into other type corporations, maybe a S corp or a C corp, where you have employees. And so, and the reason I'm explaining this part, so if we dive into, there's a verse in Deuteronomy where it talks about pay the full tithe on the increase, on your increase. And so what is the increase? Well, let's say that you are starting your business this year and you have a fantastic first year and you make $50,000 in sales, but you have $25,000 in material cost, and then you have a couple $1,000s in advertising. You've got to pay your fees for taxes and insurance and all that stuff that goes into operating a business. At the end of the day, your business has a profit of $10,000. Let's just say a first year business, that might be the case. So the business itself, the way I treat business and the way I treat persons, I tithe on my personal income. So if my business takes a loss of $10,000, there's no increase there to pay a tithe on. If my business let's just say it made $50,000 this year, and then I paid myself a paycheck of $50,000 and I took it to the storehouse, I had an increase for my family. Now, what's 10% of $50,000? $5,000. So I'm going to pay $5,000, the first $5,000. I'm not going to do it all at one check. I might be paying myself a paycheck of, say, $3,000 a month throughout the year, whatever. And so every time I write myself a paycheck, I pay 10% of that to my local church. And that is the way I do it. So if you had a corporation and you had 10, 12 employees, and your business was doing $1 million a year, but then you had payroll and all these other expenses, at the end of the year your business might only make $100,000 profit or whatever, and then you have profit sharing or whatever the case, the business itself is not a member of the church. The business doesn't pay a tithe to the church. You as an individual pay a tithe. So whatever you pay yourself from that corporation, and you take home, maybe your salary is $100,000 a year, then $10,000 is going to be your tithe to the local church, if that all makes sense. So I really love your heart for wanting to honor God with your business and pay a tithe on that. But at the end of the day, it's what are you taking home from that? I believe you said that she also had a job. So the paycheck she receives from that job, definitely going to be paying a tithe on. And then, this first year, you might be reinvesting money back in the business, buying a piece of equipment, growing the business. And so the profitability might be different next year than what it is this year. Let's hope that it is. Let's hope it's bigger. But the way I have always interpreted it, the way I have felt God lead me, I tithe on what I take to the storehouse, what I take home. But the most important thing, let's say that you think you're feeling on your heart that God is telling you to give more than what I just recommended here. The tithe is about the heart. It's about being obedient to God. So if God, and I'll give you another topic here on that. So there's a lot of debate of whether do you tithe on the gross or do you tithe on the net. And so I'm going to tell you that you tithe on what God tells you to. And the reason I say that, I believe you tithe on the net. So if you live in the state of California, let's just say, we'll give two examples. One guy lives in Tennessee where there's no state income tax and he makes $100,000 a year. Another guy lives in California where there's a 15% state income tax and he makes $100,000 a year. So he brings home $85,000 to his house. The guy in Tennessee brings home $100,000 to his house. So in my personal opinion, the way I read God's word, it says on what you're bringing on your increase. Well, the one guy has an $85,000 increase. The other guy has a $100,000 increase. And so the way I interpret it and the way I feel God has laid it on my heart is that the one guy would be paying $8,500 in tithe. The other guy would be paying $10,000 in tithe. And so that's the way I have interpreted it. But if you feel like God is telling you to tithe, and I know people that tithe on their gross, but you pray about it. And if God tells you to tithe on your net, whether he tells you to tithe on your gross, and whatever he tells you to do with your business, do it. And remember, the tithe is the first 10%. And that is the most important. It's not after you pay all your bills and then you're like, oh, okay, this is how much I have left. No, it takes faith to say, all right, this is how much I made this month. I'm writing the check now. Now we'll go see how much the electric bill was. So it's all about the heart. It's about being first. So what's your take on that, Will?
Yeah, I mean, 10% is exactly how I would word it. Now, I will say, I am in a similar situation to Lindsay, is that I work a full-time job, and then, I don't really make much right now on that as I used to, but having that side income. And so there's a couple ways you can approach it. Like Tom said, I believe in net. So whatever comes into my bank account, it's the first 10% of that, right? That's how I would interpret scripture as well. Proverbs 3 verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first fruits of all your crop, and then your barns will be filled completely and your vats will overflow with new wine. Now, that's not prosperity gospel. So do not take that out of context and think that, oh, that means if I give, I'm going to get even more. No, you may not be blessed with more money. You just may be blessed by the Spirit and the joy that you get from giving, right? And from tithing. And so, but always give the first fruit. And so with the business side of things, you can also do the same thing. Now, in a small business to where you really don't know how to calculate overhead and you really don't know how to calculate, it's that, well, I got a commission for this. I commissioned this table for $500 and, I know it cost me, $100 in wood. And a lot of us, I'll say, now there's some that are very good about it. Like when I've done stuff like that, I never track my time. Right. For me, it's more of a hobby that I enjoy, and it's a release of, an expression, and whatever I make from it is what I make from it. And I'm not like tracking and like saying, oh, if I'd have done this another 5 hours faster, I don't do that. And so it's hard sometimes to like understand, like, okay, I built this table for $500. Material is easy, right? Yeah, it was $100 in wood. My time, well, maybe you do value your time, and maybe you do go through and track, exactly how much time it took and all this stuff. And then you pay yourself from that and you say, okay, well, this is the time and whatever. One of the things my father-in-law does that I think is really cool. And so what I do the 10% as well. And again, mine is kind of the same bucket, right? It's, if I say I make $500 on a project, maybe I want to invest in a tool. And so that technically isn't coming in into my storehouse, right? That's something that I'm going to use that to buy a new saw or buy a new drill or whatever the case may be. But whatever ends up coming into the bank account, that's added there. That's 10% of whatever that is. Right. So that's the way that I do it. Now, my father-in-law does something a little bit different, and I think it's kind of cool. He does in his side hustle, when he sells stuff and he has a sawmill that's just a hobby sawmill and hobby, it's a nice piece of equipment, but he takes that money and he takes 10% of that money and he puts it into cash. And that cash is only to be used for generosity. And so what he does is maybe he pays for somebody's meal behind him in the drive-through, or maybe he pays for somebody's electric bill from church or something. He uses that money to bless others. And it's a way, maybe he leaves $100 tip at the dinner table for the waitress, because and that comes out of that. That's like his generosity kind of, and so that's the way he does it. And I think it's kind of cool. And he's done that for years. And so that's another approach that you can take with that. But Lindsay, I love your heart. And the easy mathematical answer is 10%. Whatever ends up coming into your account, into your storehouse, as Scripture would put it, 10% of that is where you could start. As Tom said, pray about it. God may want you to give more, and maybe you make really good money on your day job and you love woodworking and you can give 50% of it or something crazy. That's between you and the Lord. And another thing I just want to put on tithing. One of the things is 10%, right? It's an easy calculation, but I know people and family members that have the heart to give, and the 10% can be hard. Like, honestly, just hard, just because they don't make but $200 a week or so, and it's really hard for them, whatever the case may be. All I'm going to say is it's between you and the Lord. If you can only give $20, then you pray about that and you give it to the Lord with an open heart. Because the last thing that I want somebody to do is be hindered of giving because of a situation. And so 10% is always right. The biblical give 10%. But for whatever reason, whatever your situation is, if you're listening to this and you can't, or there's something's come up, give what you can and give it to the Lord and pray over that offering, that tithe, and give with that kind of heart. Because as a former pastor of a church, 2 churches, knowing situations that people go through and have seen a lot of things, I heard so many times, like, I don't know what to give, even if the 10%, it doesn't make sense, right? It's easy math. But let me tell you what, I've had conversation after conversation with people, and for whatever reason, it's hard for them. If you can only put $1, give $1. Whatever you can give. But always start with that 10% if you can. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. With that being said, I know people that give a lot more than that. I know some people that are given like just crazy amounts of money in their tithe. And that's one of the downsides of being a pastor of the church. I inadvertently sometimes knew what people gave, not because I was wanting to or knew. Is when you go to a small church, sometimes you have to help, sort through stuff. And I mean, we had somebody that was given like $10,000 a week. It's like, but they were extremely successful and made more money than I could even imagine. But that was their heart. They wanted to, you know what I mean? And so it doesn't matter the amount. It does 10%, right? But it's between you and the Lord, and pray to him on your situation. Maybe he wants to challenge you to 15% or 20%. I don't know. But yeah, that's a great question, Lindsay. I'd love to have you keep us updated on how that business goes. So,
Amen. I could tell you this, that tithing changed my life. And when I wrote my first tithe check, I was flat broke, and I did not have enough money to pay my bills that month. And so at the time, I'll just tell the kind of a basic part of the story. But in North Carolina, I had a sign, screen print, and engraving business, printed T-shirts, etc. And I owned the building that I was in. I had purchased the building behind me. And anyway, long story short, the city came in and dug up the street in front of that building to put all the utilities underground. Well, after they got that done, there was a battle between the city and state of who was paying to pave that. It was supposed to be a 6-month project. It took 2.5 years. And so there was no accessibility to my building for 2.5 years, but I was still paying a mortgage on it. And I was literally getting to the point where if something doesn't change, we're going to lose everything we have. And I had somebody, we finally got, that all came to an end, and accessibility via a gravel road. It was not paved, but people could get into the lot. They were working and the paving was coming and all, but we were at the end. Like, I ain't gonna lie, it was like stressful. And there's a book out there, and if you've never read it, it's called The Blessed Life by Pastor Robert Morrison out of Gateway Church in Texas. And the whole book is about tithing. And then he wrote a second book called Beyond Blessed. And that's all about giving after the tithe, about offerings, about generosity in general. And two of the best books I've ever read. Well, that pastor was preaching, he has preached a sermon series on that, on tithing and giving. And our church played it via video on our screen. And I just really felt like God telling me I needed to tithe. And so, long story short, I was like, God, this don't make sense. I don't have enough money to pay my bills now. And now you're telling me you want me to write a check for X amount of dollars. And I already don't have enough money to meet if I do this, we're going to be $600 short. And I had somebody look at my building and one space in it, wanting to rent it. And anyway, that Sunday, I was like, okay, God, I can't do it on my way's not working. I'm going to do it your way. I'm going to write the tithe check. And so our church, we met at 10 o'clock, and for about the first 20 minutes or so, we did praise and worship music, and then we would do tithes and offerings. So around 10:20, like clockwork, is when they would pass the plate. Back then, we passed the plate. Now they have boxes where you just drop it. And it came around, and I was so nervous. I was scared to death to pay that tithe. I was like, what are we going to do? I just don't know how we're going to make ends meet this month. And I remember putting the tithe check in and having this just peace about me. It was just like, okay, you know what, God? You said this is the only place I can test you. So there's a verse in the Bible that says in Malachi where, test me if I will not pour open the blessings of heaven. And I believe it's in Malachi. And a peace came over to me. And after church, I went out. I never carry my cell phone into church. I leave it in the glove box because I just like to focus on the worship. When I went out in my car, I had a text that had come through at 10:20. It said, Tom, these from the people that had looked at my building the day before. It said, we'd like to meet with you tomorrow and sign a lease. And dude, The next day we signed a lease, got a deposit, and I had exactly what I needed to pay every bill that month. Not, it wasn't like, didn't win a lottery ticket, not no prosperity gospel, didn't have that, but everything down to the penny was paid that month. And since then, I've always tithed, and we have never gone hungry. Lights have never been turned off. We're not, my last name isn't Joe Biden or Donald Trump, so whichever side of the rich spectrum you live on, I'm not a Hollywood movie star or a rock star with millions of dollars, but our needs have always been met. And I just can't tell you, I give the tithe now with joy, and I look forward to actually tithing. I know that sounds weird, but it's like seeing what God's going to do. And he is faithful. Not sitting here telling you you're going to win the lottery. I don't play the lottery, but, you're not telling you some millionaire is going to all of a sudden write you a big fat check. But I'm just going to tell you God's faithful. And if you will honor him with the first fruits, that's what he says. It's got to be the first. And we, people talk about the 10%. Well, but it's not just the 10%. It's the first 10%. If you pay all your bills and then write God the last 10%, it doesn't mean anything. It takes the step of faith to write it first, to say, all right, God, I trust you. Handle everything with the other 90%. And so if you're not a tither, I used to be one that when I go to church and I hear preachers preach on tithing, I'd be like, oh, God, here we go again. They're begging for money. And it takes money to operate the church. It takes money to feed the hungry in other countries. It takes money to help all the ministries around the world that the church does. And it comes from me giving my teeny tiny little 10% and you giving your teeny tiny little 10%. And God puts it all together and works miracles around the world. And it's just amazing to watch what God does. It really is. So if you're not tithing, I challenge you to put God to the test. He says it in his word to test him in it and do it. So, yeah, man. So let's talk about 2024.
Yeah, man, there's some exciting stuff coming up in 2024. You and I have both been feeling the Lord in the podcast. Just there's some awesome things coming up, and we're excited for what God's going to have in the podcast. And so a couple things right off the bat that we can just talk about is we're going to have a lot of guests. We've got a lot of people lined up to be on the podcast and to tell their testimony, to tell their woodworking testimony. And we've had some awesome guests on: Drew Witt, Drew Fisher, Will Britt, and we got a lot more coming. And so we're really excited about that, just to be able to spread the good news about Jesus and for you guys to hear it from other makers in the community. And so that's something that's coming up. Another thing that's coming up, and we've talked about on the podcast, is that Tom and I will be at Workbench Con. And it's a weird situation, man. We never thought in the world that we would be able to win this competition and go to Workbench Con, but it's happening. And we feel that God is going to use that in some way. We have no idea how. We're just going to keep praying that he revealed that to us in his time. And so we're going to be at Workbench Con. So if you're a listener and you're going to go to Workbench Con, shoot us a message. We want to meet everybody we can. Like, I want to be so inundated with meeting people that I'm so excited about it. Like, there's so many opportunities to grow in our woodworking and grow in our relationships with other people. And so those are some of the things that we're looking for. And, here coming up, and I think it's February, will be a year anniversary of the podcast. And so really looking forward to the next year and what that's going to look like. But yeah, that's some of the stuff for the podcast. I know, Tom, you've got some guys scheduled. I'm not sure who all you can talk about yet, but we do have some pretty awesome guests scheduled for 2024.
We do, man. I'm excited. Honestly, so when I first got on Instagram, one of the very, very first people that I like stumbled across his work and was just amazed by it. And so next week we're having Wave After Wave on, and I am so excited. Like, he's one of the very first people that I connected with. You guys might know Ginger Woodworks. We've got him in the docket, and several others. And so we're in the process of scheduling. Nolan Bilt's going to be on. And so I'm excited, man, about all the people that are going to come on and share their testimony. So, it's pretty exciting. And I just love the relationships that have been able to build in I feel like short time that we've been doing. You say a year, but I've only been doing it with you now for I don't know, was it been 6-7 months, something like that? But it's just fascinating to me, all the people that have reached out and I've gotten to be buddies with, and we, shoot each other little messages on Instagram, and I just love it. So, and I really feel like Workbench Con, I think multiple things are going to come out of that. I think one, because obviously it's geared towards social media, people with YouTube or podcasts or things. So I do think we're going to learn things that help us make the podcast better. I think that we are going to meet some people that listen to the podcast that we get to build, because there's something about meeting somebody in person, shaking their hands and getting to know them more on a personal level. And I think also there's going to be some people there that don't know Jesus. They're going to say, what's up with the Faith Talk Wood podcast shirt you got on there? And I think it's going to open doors for whether it means bringing somebody to salvation or planting a seed that, gets fertilized and grows into a salvation down the road. But I'm excited about that. But yeah, let's also on a personal level.
But one more thing on the podcast I want to talk about. We are working on, Tom and I are going to be working on merch. And we're not sure when yet, when it's all going to happen. But at some point, hopefully in Q1 of 2024, we're going to have a website and a place for you to buy Faith Talks Wood shirts and hats and stuff. And really excited about that. We've had some people reach out asking about it, and it's just something that we're really, really excited about. Just an opportunity for you to rep the podcast. And so I think, if you're going to be at Workbench Con, I think we're going to plan on having some stickers for that. And so be handing out some of that. But yeah, so that was the other thing with the podcast that we're going to be looking at doing next year, and really excited about that. But yeah, you were talking about personal stuff. So, Tom, what are some personal goals that you have for 2024?
Yeah. So, ironically, I've had a habit now for a number of years where I kind of set 5 different categories of goals, and I just kind of break it down. Spiritual is the first category. And so last year, I did my Bible reading a little differently than what I had done the previous 5 years. The previous 5 years, I read the whole Bible through every year, and did a couple different plans each year, depending upon one time I read it from start to finish. The next year I read a little bit of Old Testament, a little bit of New Testament, a little bit of Psalms and Proverbs, done several different ones. But last year, rather than trying to accomplish the whole entire Bible in a year, I wanted to really dive into it and start. And so I literally started, I was like, I want to only read 1 chapter a day, a maximum of 2 or 3. but I want to dissect it. I want to know it better. And so that's why right now I'm only in Joshua. So I started at the beginning of the year, and I mean, I have literally been reading it in different translations and really praying about it. And so I'm going to continue on that path this year, and I want to increase my prayer time even more. And then I have financial goals where I set a goal, and I really encourage people to do this, where it might be paying off a debt, or saving X amount, or maybe you're at a point now where you can say, hey, I'd like to give a little more. So I set financial goals. Physical, me and you have talked about this, and so I have gotten lackadaisic, and it's not I've gotten lazy. I've just not prioritized physical fitness. And so I have a goal of getting back in my daily routine of exercising, eating better. And so over the course of the year, I want to drop 20 pounds, but I don't just want to lose 20 pounds. I want to gain some muscle, lose some fat, increase my cardiovascular. I mean, I want to get back into triathlon shape like I used to be. And then I already set some goals. And this is one thing I fell a little short on last year. I had some goals family-wise. And I say I fell short. You know, my daughter's a college student. So the one thing about setting goals is sometimes I think we make goals that aren't realistic. And, you know, I set goals that of spending X amount of time with my wife, X amount of time with my daughter. Well, my daughter studied till midnight every night, all semester long. So I didn't get quite the daddy-daughter. I'm trying to make it up right now while she's out of school. But I try to set a goal of, you know, maybe it's going on a date night once a week, or maybe it's taking a trip with my wife once a quarter, whatever you can figure out to fit in your time. But you got to prioritize your family. And so I try to do that. And then the last one is my business. And so this year I have got goals for setting that I want to transition more out of doing auto wraps and more into doing more woodworking. And so I'm trying to do a little bit less of something I just really don't enjoy, and I want to increase my woodworking business. And so, yeah. So how about you?
Yeah, man. So some of the same stuff. Personally, fitness or health wise, I've gained a lot of weight over the last few years, and I can feel it in many, many ways in my life. And so I'm not one who's a workout kind of person. I'm more of a do stuff, and in turn it's working out, like working on the property, like just physical labor more so than, you know, getting in a gym or doing something. But one of the biggest things to get in fit is your intake. And so I have been really bad about drinking lots and lots of pop and eating garbage. It's been a problem. And so I have this innate ability. People that know me hate it. I can cold turkey anything if I put my mind to it. And I've done it. And so as of Monday, so today's Friday the 29th, Monday's the 1st, I am no longer drinking anything with sugar in it. And it's going to be all water and unsweet tea and milk. That's all I'm going to drink. And I'm going to really, really work hard at not eating processed food. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to do the best I can to just really stay diligent as far as watching what I eat. And I remember doing this a few years ago. So it's about 10 years ago, I gave up drinking pop. Now I'm from Pennsylvania. We call it pop. Some people call it Coke. Some people call it soda. I stopped drinking pop on New Year's. I did it for almost 2 years. I didn't have a single. People thought I was crazy. And I don't drink alcohol either. It's like we'd go out somewhere like to dinner, and I'd get a water or unsweet tea, and, you know, just what I did. And so I'm going to do that. But one of the things that I found is that you'd be surprised at how fast you'll lose like 5 or 10 pounds, like real quick. And so my goal is, I weigh 245, 250 right now. My goal is to be down to 225, like pretty solid. And honestly, we're going to Workbench Con the end of February. I want to lose 10 pounds by then. Like I want to feel better by then. And so I've got some goals because I know I've been to conferences like that before. And we're going to be on our feet a lot. And we're going to be, just lots of walking around and moving and stuff. And I can tell you right now, if we went to Workbench Con tomorrow, I could do it, but man, I'm going to be feeling it. It's because I'm overweight and out of shape. And so that's one of the things I'm doing. Another thing, personally, scripturally, is very similar to you, is that I'm going to be completely transparent. Over the last couple of years, I have not been good at reading the Bible every day. It's just one of those things that I had left out of my routine, and I got bad about it. And recently I've gotten back into it within the last few months, but then in the last month, 3 weeks, I have not read at least one full chapter of the Bible a day. And so, like you, I don't want to read for the sake of reading. And I don't believe in the Bible in a year plan, because you can't digest and go through the word in a year. I think it's unhealthy. I don't think it's something that's going to help you grow in your faith. If you do it, that's great. That's awesome. But there's so much. Like I've been working through the book of Romans for 3 weeks, and I'm only in the 10th chapter. And so, it's like you can't. So anyways, but what I'm going to do, there's a guy on YouTube, his name is Matthew Everhart. He's a pastor just north of Pittsburgh. He's about an hour from me. And he put out a video just recently, last week or so, of his Bible reading plan and kind of what he's done. And I love it. And I'm really excited about it. And so basically what it is you read a chapter of the Bible, you digest it, you read commentary, you take it in, and then you write, like I have a page or two for the book of Matthew, and then I put chapter 1, and then you put one sentence that's a thesis statement about what that chapter is about in a general thesis. You do that for every single chapter. And so I'm really, really excited about that. And so that's one of the things I'm going to start in Matthew on Monday. And I am going to start digging in deep. There's something about 2024. It's an election year. We're going to Workbench Con. There's just so much going on. I've felt the Lord recently really put a desire in my heart to know and be able to have apologetics on scripture, to know how to defend my faith and know what scripture says. And so I've been digging in a lot, like a lot. And I love it. It's been fantastic. And it's helped clear my mind on situations, and it's helped me see through a different lens just in the last 3 weeks. Like I've noticed like the things that I'm seeing and the perspectives that I have on life is like, and so anyways, that's a goal, is to really, even for longer than a year, but read scripture every day, at least a chapter, and take it in, not just read it for the sake of reading it. So yeah, there's that. Like you, financial goals, got some stuff that we want to do this next year. And then there's some we haven't really talked about it yet, and I'll kind of kick it off. We're running pretty long on the episode, but that's okay. If you're still here, thank you. There's some shop goals, some outside of personal goals. And I'll kick it off in saying that 2024, I'm going to be launching Willie's Wood Honey hard wax oil finish. And there's a lot that has to go into making that happen. And there's some big investments that has to happen. Not big, just like gotta start the LLC and then gotta just do some things to really kick it off. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Honestly, I'm not thinking too much as of right now in the sense of woodworking. I want to be out in the shop, and there's projects that, like, my wife wants me to build something pretty soon, and it's a cabinet for her glass, for her stained glass stuff. And so, there's stuff that I'm going to be doing in the shop. Organization is always something that I lack and that I want to get better at. But Willie's Wood Honey is something that's coming, and I really want to focus on that. I feel the Lord it's going to be more than I think. I think that there's going to be, I don't know. I just really feel this desire, this urge, the Holy Spirit, pushing on me a little bit. And so, yeah, that's some of the stuff there. And then, yeah, I mean, there's just so many different things, family goals. I mean, I really want to be intentional about putting the phone down, about not worrying about my own wants and desires and focusing on family. I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 9-month-old, and they're doing nothing but watching me right now. And so I need to be, more present. And so what about you? What about some business or some, I know you said about doing less bus wraps and more woodworking. Is there anything else specific?
Yeah. And well, so ironically, you talk about Willie's Wood Honey. When we did the logo swap challenge, I had so much fun making your logo in the wood. And I have always loved wooden signs and old fashioned, like when you go in historic districts and the stylist signage. The downside of those is they're not as profitable as doing a bus route. And it's the nature of speed, the nature of materials. But I'll be honest, if I do one more auto wrap, I think I'm going to throw up. I just do not enjoy them. I've done so many. And I just really like being in the shop. And so my goal this year for my business is to take 50% of my business and make it in the shop. I want to take and transition half my time, and I want to add a laser in the shop, master the CNC, and make more handcrafted wooden signs. I'm not going to make as much money doing that as what I can as an auto wrap because I'm fast at wrapping. I've just been doing it so long, but I enjoy it. But in that, I'm going to have to create some items, and I'm going to use cutting boards as an example. You're never going to see me in the cutting board business because it's just not what I'm passionate about. But I've got to come up with some ideas for some items that are more of a production based where I can kind of batch out things. And so been praying about that, thinking about trying to think, what can I do? Like maybe start an Etsy store or Shopify website, that type thing. But that is really, I want to spend more time in my shop. And then on a personal level, has nothing to do with making money. I'm going to learn how to hand tut joinery this year and quit. I don't know why. I realized that, we're sitting here talking about profit. And even the guys that do it on private is like, I use my table saw to do it because I'm faster at it. And, but there's just something about it. I want to learn how to hand cut mortise and tenons and hand cut dovetails. And so, not saying I'm going to go building a bunch of furniture and doing that for a living. It's just a personal thing that I want to do it. I want to learn how. And so I want to push myself in that area. So ironically, my mom gave me $200 for Christmas and told me that she wanted me to buy me a tool, something I wanted for my shop. And so I actually ordered dovetail saw. So and a couple other little hand tools. So that is my goal. It's just kind of take 10 minutes a day or something and, go out there and practice hand cutting, when I'm in the shop, and see if by the end of the year I can do it at a proficient level where I wouldn't be embarrassed to show it somebody. Because I'm going to tell you, my dovetails, I've tried it. They're awful. Of course, I don't have the proper tools. I've been doing a cheap little saw from Harbor Freight and it didn't come out that well. But so anyway, but that is my goal for the year. So
awesome. I will say I have I can't pronounce it, kite. It's a Japanese pole saw, dovetail saw. It's like $100 saw.
Suzanne,
yeah.
Okay, that's what I just ordered. Yep.
Dude, it's money.
So, and the reason I ordered that over ordering a Western saw. So, Third Coast Craftsman, I think I mentioned him last week. I love that dude's channel, and he does, a lot of hand cut stuff in his shop, and I love watching Incurs. But Third Coast Craftsman, he did a video, and he does both the Western saws and the Japanese, but he showed both of them in action and explained. He said, if you're starting out, it is far easier to learn with those than with the Western saw. And he explained why, because of the pull stroke versus the push stroke and everything. And I was like, and not to mention, you can buy, several Japanese saws for the cost of one saw if you go buy like a Lee Nielsen dovetail. So, but that's what I ordered to start with. So,
yeah, that's awesome. The physics behind pulling, that's the Japanese pole saws I love. I've got a couple of them, and they just work so much better. But that's awesome. But we're getting a little bit late here. Do a little bit of shop talk. Honestly, just wrapped up Christmas gifts. I laser engraved a bunch of door signs for all my nephews, and so it has their name laser engraved in a piece of cherry. I'll post some pictures of that on. Did I get pictures of it? I don't even know if I got pictures of it. Anyways, I'll post some of that on Instagram. But other than that, I'm kind of taking a break from the shop. I was in there a lot, laser engraving stuff and just working on stuff. I need to clean my shop. It is a mess. But right now, just kind of taking a break and looking forward to starting the new year fresh and focused and intentional. So how about you? What's going on in your shop? Well, we got some dust collection.
That's what I've been doing all day. And you talking about a mess. And so I've been cutting all that PVC. Dude, there's PVC dust everywhere in my shop. It's a disaster, but I basically got all of it cut, and I've got it dry assembled. It's laying out. So tomorrow I'm going to get the brackets up on the wall, get that all mounted up. I am so excited about not rolling my dust collector from tool to tool. It's going to save me so much time. So yeah, that is all I've been doing today. And I'm going to finish that up tomorrow. And then got to get back to working on cabinets in the house. I got to get those finished. So
yep. Awesome. Well, man, it's been a good episode. We hope everybody has a blessed new year. As you listen to this, it's the 3rd, but we hope that this year is a blessing to you. And I hope and pray that, it's an election year here in the United States, and there's a lot of stress that comes with that. Don't focus on that. Focus on the Lord, get in scripture, keep your head down, because there's nothing but distractions that comes from all the politics and all the junk. And so pray for our leaders, no matter who they are, and just look forward to what the Lord's going to do in 2024. And I am looking forward to the podcast and what he's doing through that. And there's just some awesome stuff coming that really looking forward to. But until next week, I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.